Oh, wow. I have to start with wow because we were talking about how it's another wow month and we've had a lot of them. And actually, it's just a wow time. And one of my favorite things about wow is that we could say it's way out wonderful. Now, it may not have always felt wonderful, but could have definitely blown our minds, hopefully in a good way, or shifted our perspective, hopefully in a good way. So here we are exploring for the Libra Solar Month. However, we're recording this on the day of the Pisces perigee partial lunar eclipse, meaning that the moon is closest to the Earth. It's a full moon in Pisces. It's also the fourth full moon of the season. So I would like to say it's a true blue moon because we don't always have four full moons in a season. So this is very rare that we're having. It only happens maybe every 33 months or so. And that we have this partial eclipse, which is opening an eclipse cauldron. I like to call it the Eclipse Cauldron of Transformational Change. And then the moon is sitting between Saturn and Neptune. Saturn being about form, Neptune being about formless. And the moon in Pisces, Pisces can be very formless too. So it's like, how is the formless coming into form? How are we energizing those intentions? And for me, it would be, how would the energy of universal love and compassion, very Piscean, come into a form that we can actually experience and recognize in our reality? So that might be something we could tune into. So this opens this eclipse cauldron until October 2nd, when we have an annular solar eclipse, or the ring of fire, the eclipse that has the ring of fire around the sun, which is another cauldron, another energy that really speaks into that alchemy. And I've noticed, and I started noticing this back in the like, I think early 2000s. This was a while ago when I would see eclipse windows, and I felt like I was in this time out of time in between place. And a lot of people were sharing with me that that was what they were experiencing too. So I was like, okay, I'm not just making this up. And so we are entering this in between space, and the in between space is where the greatest alchemy can happen. When it's not here or there, it's not this or that, it's neither or nor. It's like it's something in between that, where when we're focusing our attention and intention on what it is we truly want to bring forth, we can do the alchemy that helps for that to come forth, that just by being present and attentive to that energy. And so this eclipse, then we'll have the equinox, and I'll let somebody else talk about the day that going into the equinox. Oh, but before that, back up just a little bit to the 20th of September, where Neptune will be opposite the sun, which is also like a full moon effect with the Neptunian energy. So this full moon is energizing the energy so much around the Piscean, or the, how are we attuning to the field of all possibilities, where anything is possible, and then focusing on something that we want to bring into form. And the other thing about the Neptune opposition is it's the center point of the Neptune retrograde. So Neptune is retrograde for about 150 days. It went retrograde in July. It's going direct in December. It's this powerful time and this full moon effect of Neptune with the sun. So that's happening. Then we go into the equinox time, and then a few more things are happening with Neptune and Pluto, and we'll maybe come back to that. But the one thing I want to say about the eclipse on October 2nd, before I hand this over, because we might want to talk about this a little more later, is that it's happening with a star called Porama in the constellation of the Virgin Priestess. Virgin not meaning no sex, but virgin meaning sovereign, whole, and complete unto oneself. And at a time when women were considered virgin, they were not having to answer to anyone else. So that Virgin Priestess is the sovereign priestess. And even though this eclipse will be at about 10 degrees Libra, in the seasonal sign of Libra, meaning it's after the equinox time happening on September 22nd, it's with the star in the constellation of the priestess. Again, the signs are seasonal, and the constellations are the backdrop that the signs move through. This star, the reason I want to bring this up, is the star of prophecy. It is known as the star of prophecy in the shoulder. I think it's up in the shoulder of the priestess. And in ancient times, they would see this as a star that really represented prophecy. Well, here's the thing to know about prophecy. Prophecies are possibilities. So, and prophecy comes true when we put our attention on it. Or if there's a negative prophecy, it comes true when we change our behavior so something else can happen. So those are successful prophecies because people changed it. Now, if those negative prophecies come true, then clearly people weren't working with that in a conscious way. And positive prophecies, if we put our attention on it, it's like we become the self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, how are we putting our attention on things? So I feel like in this alchemical cauldron, we want to consider is, what is it that we really want to experience? What's the alchemy that we really want to have within ourselves? Are we moving towards greater self-love and greater love for all life, for this planet, for everyone on this planet? Are we moving into a time of greater peace? And as the Hopi like to say, peace and plenty for all. And also the Hopi say, we're the ones we've been waiting for. We're the ones that are here to fulfill the prophecy of this time of peace and plenty for all. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over. And just very excited. Oh, prophecy is assured to come true, but when we put our attention on it, but it won't always come true in the way that we have thought about it. So the other piece of it is to not be attached to how it looks. So now I'll turn it over. Thank you.
I love that, Kaylin. Just here's to peace and plenty for all. I'm just holding that. Hi, everyone. I hope you have been enjoying the eclipse energy, and some archetypal symbolism that I would love to add to the cauldron are upon the ingress of the sun into Libra. Of course, that's equinox, the equal balance day and night. We have the grand trine energy between Pluto, Uranus, and the sun, but also Mercury in Virgo, Black Moon Lilith in Virgo, and prior to that, of course, that full moon with the sun in Virgo and moon in Pisces were also involved in this trine energy between Pluto and Uranus, which has been really strong. So some keywords that adds to the cauldron, of course, regeneration, transformation. And I also think with Pluto and Uranus, both retrograde and earth signs, there's some sort of remembrance of something practically applicable, like what are the actual tools, the actual resources, things we can hold in our hands, something tangible, but how does that relate with the intangible, the retrograde, internal redefinition of things? So that's really fascinating, and it can bring us to all sorts of fun tangents. We also, within that energy, have Venus square Pluto, and she's really important because she's the planetary host of Libra and the South Node, and her being at 29 degrees Libra really shows that connection to endings. But even though she is about to switch from Libra into Scorpio, and that's going to be very important for the solar eclipse because that's its whole own big energy, and I'd love to talk more about that after. But whenever we have an ingress chart, that energy is really carried through the whole month. And especially because it's happening in a midpoint, in an in-between point, it feels really important to acknowledge that piece of the endings and the regeneration of relationships, because we're seeing the same story playing out in quite a few different ways. So like the Pluto piece, there's always that ending transformation. Venus at a final degree, that's the ending and transformation. I have spoken to so many people with relationships ending and changing, and even just dynamics with the same person changing. And so there's a lot that's still on the table. And I think especially because we've been working with the nodal axis of Aries Libra for the past, almost year plus, this is a time where we start to see the integration of those lessons, where we're kind of coming to that shifting point between two nodal axes. So I love the theme of alchemy here. And I think it's really beautiful to know what Virgo, Pisces, and Libra, because these are kind of the big hitters right now, what they all add in the alchemical process. So I just wanted to share a little bit about that. So Virgo has a lot to do with separation, analysis, purification, but it's that separation and conjunction piece where you're taking all the pieces apart and then you're putting them back together from that more purified place. So we're doing that in ourselves. And then combined with Pisces, that dissolution, but also fermentation. And what does that offer to surrender and transcendence, compassion? And we're really releasing, I think, a lot of rigid ego structures with Saturn, of course, and Neptune in Pisces. And then Libra is kind of similar to Virgo in that they're both connected to the conjunctio part of the alchemical process, but Libra is focusing on these seeming opposites to bring them into balance. So masculine with feminine, or light and dark, day and night. And of course, that's equinox. So how are we bringing all of that together? And the sublimation part of the alchemical process, where it's bringing all of this purified material that Virgo has helped to purify into a higher state of being. And this is kind of my own adding to this, from the esoteric astrology perspective, Libra is like the pause, like taking a moment to breathe. And it's like, if you're born with a lot of strong Libra in your chart, it's like this lifetime is meant to be a little bit more restful, but I don't think the people with strong Libra would say that, but I think that's always the invitation, is to come more into that pause energy so that you can hold the intensity and the extremity of these opposites, and really be able to hold the paradox and hold the contradiction and hold all the nuance. So those are just some energies and archetypes that I wanted us to kind of all be aware of as we talk about this month, because there's just so much in the cauldron. And I love working with this as a metaphor, you know, this cauldron for our alchemical experience right now.
Oh, I love that, Nora. I just, as you were sharing, I mean, it's so, I'm feeling the wisdom of everything you're sharing. And then also like noticing within myself, my own body response of kind of like feeling for myself, feeling a sense of like resistance to like, oh my gosh, I feel a lot of intensity kind of coming up with this season. I have a lot of personal planets like aspecting some of these things, so getting a lot of like an invitation for alchemy on a very like evolutionary level. And so I just kind of want to speak into that for a moment, that like when, because I mean it, like looking at the astrology chart, like there's a lot of intensity there, right? Like the two, like you spoke to Venus being like the temple keeper of the Libra mysteries. She's in a square to Pluto. And then Mars, and she's also the temple keeper of where the South Node is. And then Mars, right, the temple keeper of where the North Node is still in a square to the lunar nodes at the equinox chart. I mean, it's separated a little bit, but it's still pretty strong. And so both these two planets that are like temple keeping where the lunar nodes are right now are in these pretty kind of intense aspects in this equinox chart. Not to say we'll all have like a super intense experience. It really just depends on how our own personal natal chart is activated and where we are on our evolutionary journey. But I think this is the medicine, right? Like for those like myself that might be having this moment of like resistance to like kind of feeling into what the energy might feel like for me. I think that's some of the medicine of this Pisces lunar eclipse is like the surrender, like the acceptance and the surrender and the trust that there is this higher unfolding of everything that is supporting our highest path and our highest evolution. And I love, Kaylin, what you spoke about, prophecy and possibility. I love that. And that just kind of also like how everything's like multidimensional. That also makes me think of like the Pisces and Gemini kind of like square that we have. I think of Pisces and very much so as like the sign of prophecy, and then Gemini is like the sign of possibility, how we can sense with our attention into some of the timelines and some of the possibility, and then what we put our mental attention into, our intention and attention, that often is what amplifies and reflects back to us. And as we're going into the equinox chart, we also have Mercury in Virgo squaring Jupiter and Gemini, and then we're still in that like Pisces full moon lunar eclipse kind of energy. And I just feel there's this invitation to expand the possibilities of what we can see, to be able to expand our perspective and expand the possibilities that are available to us, that often we might kind of have like mental blinders between. I just want to kind of bring in this book for anyone who might be interested. I've been reading this book called Take Off Your Glasses and See, and it is like, yes, it is like related to physical vision, but it's also very much related to our spiritual vision as well. So even if you like don't wear glasses or don't have any like vision issues, it's actually a really fascinating book. And it's all about expanding our visual field as well as our spiritual visual field, and expanding the possibility of what we can receive into our field. And so that might just be an interesting book for anyone who like feels a resonance with that. But I just want to speak into for a moment with Mars and Cancer squaring the lunar nodes in Aries and Libra as we're going into the equinox chart. It's actually a cardinal cross because Ceres is there in Capricorn, kind of the mother archetype, completing the cardinal cross. So we have this really really interesting dynamic of, I think, this ongoing perhaps just things from our childhood, unresolved traumas, unresolved kind of emotional, unprocessed emotion that got stuffed down into our unconscious, likely because we didn't have someone to like co-regulate with us when we were going through it when we were a child. And it can be anywhere from more like obvious traumatic experiences to more subtle traumatic experiences that you might not necessarily think of as a traumatic experience at like first blush, but a trauma it can be such a large range of things we're experiencing. It's just the inability to like fully process through something that we were experiencing, that we didn't have anywhere, any place for those emotions to go. So they got stuck and stagnant within us, creating that unresolved trauma. And then we have the unconscious story attached to it too. And so I think there's something really powerful, some alchemical healing potential for that as we go through this next kind of season, equinox to solstice. And there's this really powerful invitation, Mars, to take assertive, conscious inspired action on the type of nurturance that we need to kind of support us in that evolutionary journey from Libra South Node to Aries North Node. So perhaps where did we, because we didn't receive like maybe the co-regulation we needed as a child while we were going through something. So maybe we took on some of those Libra South Node, right? Like overly people pleasing, overly agreeable, not wanting to rock the boat, kind of maybe leading into those codependency kind of dynamics. So there's this invitation to reparent ourselves and to nurture ourselves in a way to kind of align and embody and hold more space for some of the Aries North Node, which is really putting our wants and needs and desires, holding those primary, bringing forth more of our individuality, not toning ourselves down, bringing forth, having safety, creating a sense of safety within ourselves to be more authentic and bring more of our full aliveness and to really live life fully alive, maybe releasing some of the like timidness or trepidation to really like fully commit to living a life fully alive. And so there's so much I do feel, when I look at the chart, I do see quite a bit of intensity, but as we're going through it, to know there's so much potential and possibility on the other end of that transformation.
So much. Before anything, like I just want to say thank you, because it's amazing how sharing this space is so nurturing for each one of us, and how like I'm super thankful for the three of you. And for everyone who is listening to us, right? Like this is a cauldron. Like every time we gather together, something is happening. And I think with all this, and that's the magic of the Saturn in Pisces, that we forget about it sometimes, but it's giving form to something. And what I will say with this axis is like a trailer. We are preparing for the following years. I think in 25, 26, we are going to see a lot of changes. So it's like, what do we really want to take with us in that new life that is coming up soon? And the same, like in this month, we have like a preview. Like, what do we want to take for the solar eclipse? Because solar eclipses are much more about beginnings, even if this one is with the South Node. But it's like, what wisdom do we have from the past? Because something that I've been like really tuning a lot into is that the South Node is not just everything about cleaning and all of this. It's the wisdom that we bring, like the talents. If we, in a past life, we were astrologers already, and that's my experience with astrology. It was so easy to learn, and I teach it, and people really struggle, and like, how do you struggle? This makes so much sense. And it's because it was already in my system. It was just remembering. And that is happening for all of us. I think there are a lot of DNA, memory, cellular activation that is happening every time we listen to something and there is a memory activated. And not all the past is a karma that we did something wrong to someone and we have to forgive and we have to, like, no, we also have past that we were priestesses and that we were queens and kings and we have so much power. And what do we do with this power? What do we did in that time? And also releasing the stories. Like there is so much about releasing the stories that we attach to everything that Jamie was talking about, the unsolved trauma. Sometimes it's like, that's not you 100%. Anything that happened to you, and I'm talking with like hard experiences in my life, in this life, it's like, that's not me fully. So it's like you release the feeling, you release the story, and there is a bigger person coming up. And I think that Mars in Cancer is really taking a stand for that. It's like, is not in exile, is not in like all these dignities. It's like, can we also dissolve them? Because Mars in Cancer is really powerful and is really creating safe spaces for other people, for themselves, and for ourselves. So it's like, how can we really be strong in our lives to create safe spaces for gestation? And I think that Mars in Cancer, that at this moment is squaring the nodes, then is going to sextile, not trying Saturn. So it's like really giving shape to something in the energetics that maybe we are not seeing yet. So then we get frustrated, but the seeing is coming later. So it's like, I think whatever work we do now in the energetic planes, we are going to see a lot in the upcoming years. So it's really trust, that faith, that trust. And something that I've been paying a lot of attention also with Mercury in Virgo is that the language we use in everyday life, how do we talk about ourselves? Like, I did this wrong again, and then suddenly we are like, or I'm too old for that, or I'm too young for that, or I tried in the past and it didn't happen, so then it doesn't happen. We are in a different world. So wherever you tried in the past, it doesn't mean it won't work in the future. And we are never too old for anything. We are never too young for anything. It's like all the limitations that we put on ourselves in everyday life. Like this summer for me was just like I could see everywhere. Like in every sentence, I was just seeing how we are. That prophecy that Kailin was talking, we do it as a bad prophecy for ourselves all the time, and the self-limiting in our words. So I think with that Mercury opposite Saturn as well, and then opposite Neptune, is also saying to us to be really exquisite and delicate with our words. It's like, and also the mental words and also our dreaming words. Like, what do we tell ourselves when we are sleeping? All of that is really creating our reality. So, yeah, a lot.
I love this so much. Thank you, Mar. You're inspiring me because Mercury will go into Libra on the 26th, so at reactivating the equinox point. And it has so much to do with what we believe, perceive, and what we're continually speaking into. You just spoke into that so brilliantly. And then Mercury is going to be with the sun and the moon within a degree and very close to Purima at the time of the annular solar eclipse, meaning that the sun is far from the earth. So, I mean, the moon is far from the earth, so it's not big enough to cover the sun. So that's why it leaves a ring of fire around the sun. And it's a magical experience if you ever get a chance to see a total annular, I mean, it's not a total eclipse, but an annular eclipse, because it creates little eclipses all over the ground when the way the light comes through, and it's just amazing. And it's like peering into the cauldron, I guess, is the way it feels like to me, into that magical, alchemical, transformational cauldron that we have the possibility for. And so so how we are communicating to ourselves, what we're thinking, what we're saying, what we're energizing, and that does become that's our prophecy. That's what we're creating. That's what we're co-creating with Great Mystery. So we want to be careful about how we're speaking into those things. And in Libra, we want to be doing it in a way that is good for us, but also good for everyone else. In partnership, and hopefully we can partner with each other, which is why I love how we do our roundtables, because it's such a great partnership and everybody has something amazing to bring. And when we think about Libra being like the round table, King Arthur had his round table. He did not want to sit in a place more important than his knights. So he created the round table so everybody sat equally around the table, and that everyone has something equally value to bring. It may not be the same, but it's of equal value. And so something about the Libra mysteries that we can also energize in this window, this eclipse window, and also this Libra Solar Month, is that we are in conscious collaboration and co-creation with each other and with life itself. So I know there's probably a lot more, but I'm just gonna leave it there and pass it along.
I guess it might be good to open up a little bit more into that solar eclipse, just with some of the transits. And I am really feeling the Black Moon Lilith component here. I don't know if everybody follows Black Moon Lilith, works with her. She's like the apogee of the moon. So like Kaylin was describing, like the moon's far away. So that's, if the moon and Black Moon Lilith are near each other in a chart, that means that the moon is very far away. If you have Black Moon Lilith in your natal chart, say opposing the moon, that means your moon's actually really close to the earth when you were born. So that's just like a fun fact within your chart. So knowing all of that and kind of how that creates that ring, it's so cool. I'm so excited to explore that. What does the Lilith archetype call in for you? Is there a repression of power? Is there a reclamation of your essence, your integrity, your authenticity? I feel like that's a big part of it. And I have noticed this is a big theme for everybody that I've been working with right now, myself included. And especially as it pertains to that communication, because Mercury is also conjunct. And where do we silence from that place of, oh, I don't want to be too much, or I'm afraid of my power, I don't want to rock the boat. I feel like we're going to see a lot of openness around that. And I've been really working with the South Node in terms of release to make space for what I want to create next. So when I release that idea of too muchness, or like, oh, this is a shadow part of my expression that should not be explored or expressed, then it takes up space in my personal creative cauldron. So I feel like this is a really great time to release anything that is ultimately holding you back from the new that you're being invited to create. And I feel like it is connected to that fear of going to the dark side, of exploring the shadow, of working with anything that's repressed and ultimately redeeming it, especially because the sun, I think, is offering this sort of redemption of what has been in the shadow. That feels like a really interesting energy to observe here, especially as it pertains to how we are leaders of our own life, but also, leadership in general, just understanding the mysteries, understanding that things are more nuanced and more complex than what meets the eye. I think that's a big part of how we might be collectively evolving out of this like black or white thinking, but more into the nuance. It's kind of like the maturation of our collective understanding. Another thing that I really wanted to bring attention to was the Jupiter sextile Chiron, because sextiles are opportunities. Jupiter amplifies and expands, and Chiron is the wounded healer turned sensitive healer, empowered teacher. So I think that sextile is going to amplify some of our sensitivities, particularly around our instincts, because Chiron's in Aries. So you might feel a little bit more of that call of like, oh, I'm feeling instinctually led to say this to a random stranger in a grocery store. I'm feeling instinctually guided to do this action that I might not always do because I'm feeling a little bit more playful or a little bit more curious. I feel like that's the opportunity and the invitation with Jupiter Chiron. So really listening to those sensitivities. So I feel like the Black Moon Lilith, Mercury with the solar eclipse opens that possibility. And then we have this more ongoing relationship between Jupiter and Chiron. Especially because Jupiter is also going to station retrograde October 9th. So we've got all of this, like, let's go deeper, let's go back, let's puzzle this out a little bit. Let's really explore the possibilities. And something else, this is a little bit sidebar, but I wanted to bring attention to the relationship between Venus Mars, because they're shifting. So at the time that we're recording this, Venus is still in Libra, and there's that square relationship between Libra and Cancer. And that's pretty much, before the eclipse portal. But then after the eclipse portal, they are in trine relationship because Venus is in Scorpio and Mars is in Cancer. And then there's this grand trine that's kind of forming with Saturn. So it almost seems like when we are releasing the projections and the ideas of how we maybe get to show up in relationship, and then we're calling in that radical emotional honesty that Venus and Scorpio represents. Now she's on board with what Mars and Cancer is protecting and what Saturn and Pisces is helping us to bring form to. So that I think is just also a really exciting energy for these months ahead.
Wow, I love that. This is so therapeutic for me to listen to each of your wisdom, to receive in your wisdom and your brilliance. And Nura, I love what you shared. And that just made me also think of what you were speaking about, like our instinctual wisdom, that also, I feel like also there's this really big theme of kind of reconnecting with our gut instinct as well, with Mars squaring the lunar nodes, that kind of being a theme as we're going into the equinox, or the equinox chart, because so many of us have disconnected from our gut instinct, just from due to our conditioning, our experiences in life. At some point along the way, most of us disconnected from our body wisdom and our gut instinct, and so many of us are healing that now. But I feel like there's actually some really beautiful healing potential to really have healing around that, so we can reconnect with how we feel our gut instinct through our body there with Mars and Cancer, and to not shut that down, and to really listen and trust that, and have a trust in our gut instinct and our body wisdom. And there's such a theme with that Pisces lunar eclipse, which is that energy is still coloring the equinox chart, because we're just moving out of that lunar eclipse as we're going into the equinox chart around. And you spoke to it, Nura, like kind of having this awareness that things might not be how they seem with that Neptune there. Neptune kind of often brings in this energy of like, things are not quite what they seem when we try to like know it with our thinking mind. Usually we're going to kind of get in a mental loop and kind of get off the mark. It's really about, with Neptune, it's about that really opening up to our intuition, and really allowing our heart, like our higher heart, to guide us. There's just this really big invitation to lean into the mystery, being willing to not know, actually being to kind of surrender into the mystery, into not knowing, to bring us to something maybe better than what we could have previously imagined. I'm kind of like drawing on your inspiration, Kaylin, when I'm saying that. And I just want to also speak, and actually, well, I want to speak into the the full moon we're going to have in Aries with Chiron, but also in the equinox chart, the moon is at 1 Gemini, I believe. I like don't have the equinox chart up anymore, but I think the moon is at like 1 Gemini, and it's making a trine to the sun. And this is like a kind of a in that really beautiful like disseminating moon phase, which is all about like sharing our wisdom, sharing our gifts, sharing whatever has like come to fruition with us in that lunar cycle. So there's this really beautiful energy, and I love that, right? Because the Libra equinox, Libra is all about like the connection and the collaboration. There is something really beautiful about that connection, that collaboration, sharing our wisdom and gifts with others, and receiving others' wisdom and gifts as well, into this like kind of collaborative kind of like circle energy. I love, Kaylin, you spoke about like the round table. That's such a beautiful, beautiful metaphor for, I feel like, the season. And I just want to speak to, we have a full moon, which is not an eclipse, but it's the full moon following that Libra Aries or Libra solar eclipse that we have on October 2nd. Following that, about 2 weeks later, on October 17th, we have the Aries full moon. And it is at 24 degrees, moon 24 Aries, sun 24 Libra, and it's conjunct Chiron at 21 Aries. Also, it's like completely perfectly conjunct Eris as well at 24 degrees of Aries. And I feel like this full moon really, like this, what I immediately thought was, oh, well, we had, in April 8th, we had that Aries total solar eclipse. I think it was at 19 degrees of Aries. I can't remember exactly, but the big thing was that it was conjunct Chiron. Chiron was like very close to, or maybe at this, I don't think the same degree. My mind is like, I can't.
Exactly the same degree.
Okay. Yeah, it was exactly. Thank you. Like my Mercury Pisces is struggling. Neptune there. It was exactly the same degree. So this makes me, this just is to me as like a reactivation of that Aries total solar eclipse we had in April. Now we're coming to the full moon, right? Kind of like that halfway point, things coming into expression, things coming into illumination, maybe things materializing, things manifesting. Maybe there's something to let go of as well and come to completion, but it is like an Aries North Node kind of full moon. And so there's something very interesting about maybe some theme we've had in our life that kind of got seeded or that we are working with. And I also would really see some really powerful healing potential of maybe something intense or challenging we were working with and that Aries solar eclipse. So it's just a very fascinating full moon that I feel like ties back to that April eclipse. And it's not an eclipse, but it kind of feels like one because the lunation cycle that it's the full moon starts with a Libra solar eclipse. So it's the full moon that started in an eclipse with an eclipse new moon essentially, and it ties back to that eclipse back in April. So it kind of feels like an eclipse to me, even though it's not technically, just what I'm energetically feeling, which eclipses just are accelerated change to support our evolution. And often this also ties in with this Pisces lunar eclipse that we're moving into, right? Like oftentimes, and Kaylin, you kind of spoke to it as well, we have this idea about how things should go, what we think is best for ourselves and the situations and what we want. But actually what's truly in alignment for us may actually be a bit different than what our conscious mind or our ego mind, however you want to say it, can come up with. And so there's eclipses really bring us are these big like catalysts to really align with perhaps like maybe what our higher self or a higher unfolding like really is like conceptualizing. So I just wanted to bring that in.
Amazing. Yeah, I think my invitation with all of this is for everyone with the solar eclipse and then going into the full moon that Jamie spoke about it, is that the first relationship that we have is within ourselves. And I think Libra sometimes has been a little bit misunderstood if it's only about relationships, because it's so much bigger than that. It's about the harmony of like the perfect order, the beauty way, is the really everything is relationship. It's not just about your partner. It's so much bigger than that. It's how everything is in harmony with each other. There is black, there is light, darkness. And if we polarize too much into the light, then the darkness gets repressed. And I think that Lilith, that Nura was talking about, is that repressed dark goddess that is so important for harmony. Like we cannot have in Egypt, Isis has her sister that it was Nephthys, and not so many people know about it, but it worked in the dark. Like it's not so well known because it's not meant to be so well known. But Isis was a lot more powerful when she was working with her sister. So it's like we need the dark goddess and we need the light goddess. And the same with the masculine, that we need the dark masculine and the light masculine, like is the natural masculine, like the primitive energetic instinct that Jamie was talking about. And dark is not evil. Evil is when dark is repressed. And then all this shame regarding our desires that are natural, then they get evil because they have been just like under the surface. And I think the whole, like the solar is like, there's so much Libra there, right? It's just all the focus there. And then in the full moon, it's like, how can we be brave to find balance in our life? And that is the axis, and like not repressing ourselves for the others, but then at the same time listening to the others and not have to be like on their faces. Like, it's how do we find that balance all the time? And what I keep seeing is that vertical alignment is so important. Lately, I've been doing a lot of Qigong. So it's a lot about finding your center and how the balance is within yourself. And then when you are nurtured within yourself, when you relate with others, is from such a different space, because you are not expecting others to do what you want to do, but you don't say it, because it's Libra shadow. It's just like, in order to keep peace, you just don't say anything or lie. Like, I was living in Thailand, and it's such an interesting thing that is allowed culturally to lie in order to keep the, like, out of conflict. So culturally, it's much more important the wellness of the community than each individual. So for the Western people that were living in Thailand, it was such a like difficult experience not to be able to say, or sometimes they say yes, but you see in the faces that they're saying no, but they don't really allow themselves to say no. But I learned so much from that as well, right? Like, keeping the harmony, it has a shadow, and being on the faces of others has a shadow as well. So the Libra mystery is about how can we find that balance all the time between the light and the darkness, the above and the below. Like, everything is always a dance. And for me, something that helps me a lot with Libra in general, having my ascendant and 3 planets there, is the infinite symbol. And I have shared here before, I think last year when we were in Libra season, because it's always like, for me, that is the mystery of Libra. It's like you give and you are receiving. And it's not that you give in order to receive. It's not that you listen because you want to talk after. It's that you truly listen and you receive it, and then you share. And the same, lately, I'm working also with trees, and like, not just getting something from the tree, but offering something to the tree. Like, can I have a relationship with you? Can we ask for permission sometimes for, like, maybe they don't want to, like, they also have a spirit. And I think that sometimes, especially in like more Western cultures, and I have experienced that a lot living in Thailand for 12 years, it's like, we take a lot of space. That is great, but sometimes it's because there is no this alignment. And when it's from this alignment, it's not about taking a space, it's about being who we are. So if we need to be quiet for an hour and another person needs to speak up, it's perfect. And if it's not balanced, and that person is always speaking up, and you don't have a space, then there is something, right? But it's such an interesting invitation, I think, that solar eclipse, to see what is out of balance in your life. How can we have more harmony, more beauty with capital letters in all the areas? And how is a beginning? And instead of being afraid of the eclipses, that I am here, is fear is not part of the equation getting into astrology. Like, if we fear is okay, but we don't have to nurture the fear, right? And I think with eclipses, in my own experience, I have always felt this momentum of like the energy of helping universe saying, yes, that's for you. If you desire is in your life. So I think with this Libra solar eclipse, is like, what do we desire to live in harmony? Like, what is out of balance in our lives? And how can we take action into that? Because it's squaring Mars. Like, action is important. And just one more thing, that Mars is going to be really strong the upcoming months in the retrograde. And the point that is during the solar eclipse is close to where will be stationing direct afterwards. That it will be set during the eclipse is 15 degrees, and later on will be 17. it's close enough. So I think that is a point that is going to be very important, and the whole Mars in Cancer is going to be very important. And there is no we and them. I think that will be very important for that in the future, when Mars opposes Pluto and all of this, like that tribal energy of like my country, my family, and they are against. So it's like, how can we be more and more a family, humanity?
Oh, that's so beautiful. All right, I'm going to invite us to sum up in a sentence or two what we'd like to leave people with. And I'd like to leave people with the idea that we are in this alchemical cauldron, and in the process of alchemy, it's taking the base elements and transforming them into gold or something higher, better, more amazing. So it's not about getting rid of, but about transforming. And the last thing I want to say is, I said the Hopi prophecy was peace and plenty, but it's actually peace, plenty, and illumination. And I feel like we are so in that time. So I want to leave with that idea.
That's beautiful. Peace, plenty, and illumination. I would love to offer a reminder of the wonderful novelist Paulo Coelho's work, The Alchemist. If you haven't read that, it's an amazing book. But actually, what immediately sparked was his book, Brida. Have any of you read that book? So good. Oh my gosh. It was one of my, read it first in high school. Brief synopsis. Main character, she connects with a solar tradition and a lunar tradition, masculine and feminine. So I'll leave it there. I feel like it fits so well with everything that we shared about. If you loved The Alchemist, you would absolutely love Brida. It's being told by a woman's perspective as the main character. So it's just such a beautiful book, and hopefully it can help inform your own alchemical journey for this month ahead.
You're muted, Jamie.
I'm muted. When the old stories come up, be open to not knowing and a different possibility.
Beautiful.
And my invitation is that offering to a tree or something, like also share your gifts instead of always asking for something, just offering first, and then connect with the infinity symbol every time that we want to connect with someone, with anything in nature. Like, I see infinity symbols everywhere. So I think in the Libra season is a really nice symbol to engage with.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you all so much. This has been brilliant. I love it. I love the summaries, and we hope you have an amazing Libra Solar Month. It is so powerful, and we look forward to seeing you again in the Scorpio Solar Month. Bye, everybody.